Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Mosqueda. That was a very generous introduction. And I think your introduction is longer than my presentation, but anyway, allow me to share the topic that I'm going to present today. Also, good afternoon to our viewers, the Xavier community, university, especially the College of Agriculture community, our viewers from the other state universities and colleges, and from the other national government agencies, and also those who are just watching us live via Facebook and other platforms. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge and of course my Assistant Director, Ms. Lisa Arce, who was also instrumental in arranging for this presentation. And of course, with the opportunity given to us in PhilRootcrops and the Visayas State University to share with you the industry status of root crops. No? So that is the topic that I am assigned today. And I'm actually an organic staff of PhilRootcrops before I became president. So the development of root crops since 1977 was actually, I was involved in the development of this industry for the past many years. No? We have been actually traversing the more than 4 decades of being established here in the Philippines and as a leading research center for root crops. So we are located in, for those of you who do not know, in Baybay City, Leyte. And the Visayas State University is formerly called the Visayas State College of Agriculture, which I took my bachelor's degree. Anyway, please allow me to share my presentation, which is the topic that we are going to discuss today. But before that, allow me to correct actually the one part of the presentation of my introduction, Dr. Mosqueda. I'm the president of PASOK, but on Region 8 only. I'm the vice president for the national PASOK, but in Region 8, I'm the president. So I think we have another president. We have the national president in the person of Dr. Ronquillo for PASOK National. Nonetheless, okay, the topic that was assigned to me is the Philippine root crop industry status and breakthroughs. And I'm very glad that many of our young would-be agriculturists are present, especially in Xavier University, through the College of Agriculture. I'm also glad that this topic has been one of your episodes in your webinar series, because I know that in root crops, there are just so many possibilities, opportunities for livelihood projects, for commercialization, and for further improvement of this industry. So I will focus mainly on the industry status and breakthroughs, and I will share with you what has been going on during the past decades of development in field root crops, how we grew, the technologies that we generated, the status of our researches at the moment, and where we are connected in terms of community engagement and extension of all our programs and researches across the nation. Now, okay, so the outline of this talk, we will be dealing with what are root crops for those who do not particularly know the other root crops aside from the major root crops, the industry situationer, the industry roadmap, the breakthroughs in the root crop industry, and lastly, I will mention on the overview of field root crops and what we are doing here. How are we connected with the Department of Agriculture, and what are the initiatives being done in field root crops with regards to the present pandemic or present crisis now? Okay, so allow me to just explain simply what are root crops. Okay, if you see root crops, these are actually group of plants with tubers on the underground stems or on the side, roots that are used for food. for fodder, for feed, or for manufacture. No? So these are also crops grown for their storage roots, and crops which develop storage organs build the soil surface. So if you notice your popular sweet potato, for example, or your cassava, these are actually underground roots. So that's why they are called root crops. And in the Philippines, we have four major root crops that are being identified. We have cassava, and then we have sweet potato, and then we have gabi or taro, and we have the yam, or the purple yam, or the white yam, or ube, in other words. So these are we considered as the major root crops. And we also have the so-called minor root crops, which I will show you a little later. But nonetheless, the importance of this group of plants are tremendous. Not only they are being considered as staple in some communities or in some groups of people, but also they are very important in terms of source of carbohydrate. So root crops are among the top 10 producing crops in terms of carbohydrate production. Okay, so of course, we know about cereals, rice, corn. They are also carbohydrate source, but root crops are among the 10 other crops considered for carbohydrate source. Because you notice that, for example, cassava or sweet potato, they are actually rich in starch. No? They are rich in carbohydrates. And so they become really, that's why some of them consider these crops as staple food. And the other very important property of root crops is these crops have broad adaptability that allows them to be produced even under unfavorable growing conditions. What does this mean? This means that even in marginal soils or even in soils that are perhaps considered not fit for growing other crops, root crops can actually grow. So simply, if you plant a sweet potato cutting or a cassava cutting in a really an area where perhaps not favorable for other crops, you will notice that this sweet potato or cassava will grow and will really adapt to this condition. In fact, at present time, our climate mitigating strategies is actually to really put root crops in front of our strategies as a crop that can survive or that is able to adapt even in adverse climatic conditions. So for example, if you have event typhoons or flooding, you will notice that kamote, our sweet potato, still remained actually there, even if they are flooded. And when the flood subsides, your sweet potatoes still emerge victorious, no? They still remain, grow, and able to adjust immediately. So that's a very good point. And these and other features actually endow root crops with special capacity to contribute to food security, equity, poverty alleviation, and environmental protection, as we will go later in our next slides. Okay, so as I said, our major root crops are actually cassava. Here in our area, in Leyte, we call them balanghoy in our local dialect. And then some call this as tapioca, but the generic term is actually cassava or the maniho esculenta L. And then we have the sweet potato, or potato, of course, the kamote. There are a number of varieties, as I will show you later on, of kamote or sweet potato already being developed. And also for a variety of purposes or variety of uses, for food, for commercial, for industry, so on and so forth. And then we have the ube, and the most famous of this is actually the purple ube, or we call it purple yam. And these are being used, and in fact, this is very in high demand in terms of utilization of the purple varieties for delicacies, for ice cream, and for cakes, and pastries, so on and so forth. So you have your ube, and then we have your gabi, or generally called as taro, and we also use them popularly. And in fact, these are also rich in starch, and the starch also have very desirable properties for other commercial applications or food preparation. And even gabi can also be used in our ginataan or our sinigang, so on and so forth. Now, okay, for the minor root crops, for the information of everyone, these are just 4 of the minor root crops that are being displayed here, but there are many minor root crops that we consider as minor. They are considered as minor because their level of production is also low, and also their activities in terms of research, extension, and other development are still actually in the lower level compared to the major root crops like cassava, sweet potato, taro, and yam. But now in our center, we are popularizing some of these crops. In fact, we are moving them to a higher level so that they can also catch up with technologies that are actually perfectly suited for these minor root crops in terms of commercial value or value addition, so on and so forth. So we have sinkamas or jicama, as it is called in English. Sinkamas is very popular, not only as, but you can eat them raw. And then we have the arrowroot, which is very popular also in terms of biscuits. And then togi. And then we have the palaw or palawan, which is actually the same, similar as arrowroot, but different in their properties. And then we have the santosomas or karlang. And then we have so many other varieties of minor root crops that are also part of our research trust. So now let's go to the root crop industry or the situation. So how are we located in terms of this industry in the market? So let me begin by telling you about the area and the volume of production of these major root crops in our country. So we have here the 4 major root crops: cassava, sweet potato, yam, and taro. And the blue bars are actually for the area planted in terms of hectareage, and the orange are actually in terms of the volume produced in thousands of metric tons. So if you compare all these crops, the area planted to cassava is actually the highest compared to the area planted with taro or gabi. And of course, consequently, the volume of production of cassava is actually very high. You have there, and then the lowest is actually for yam. So you might think, why is this so? Because of course, this is also dictated by the utilization of these crops, commercial utilization of these crops, they're available in market, and the products that can be derived. And most of all, the agripreneurs or those business or ventures that are actually using cassava in their industries or sweet potato for some specific purpose. And taro and gabi not much, because they are probably confined only to the use as food and some other specialized products. And yam probably because not all areas in the country can be suited for the production of yam. And of course, there are really areas that are really good producers of yam, like what we have in Bohol, famous for their particular variety of purple yam, which are actually in demand in the market. And although other areas are also producing this type of major root crop in the other, in other locations. So production and utilization trends of cassava, on the other hand, you will notice that from 2010 to 2019, there's not much change in the terms of the volume and cassava production in our country, from 2010. Well, there is in terms of volume, in terms of area, more or less similar, the same areas have been planted with cassava, although the volume of production has increased. Well, this is probably because of the technologies that are being applied as an intervention to increase the production of cassava. And also, the other thing is some of these companies or producers are also mechanizing production. And so if you do that, you would actually, there is a probability that you would increase also production, because in terms of, especially for, and also integrating the new technologies that have been developed or applied for cassava production. In terms of the volume and areas where these are produced in the country, you will notice that ARMM produced 40% of the total production area. This is a figure actually, I think this is a figure in 2018 or 19. The second is followed by 26% in northern Mindanao, and then you have from Cagayan Valley, and all others are being divided across all regions in the country. So you will notice that 40%, a whooping 40% has been produced out of the total cassava production in ARMM. So of course you have to notice that they also have the largest area available for cassava production. And these are also some of the industries that are utilizing cassava as a substrate for commercial utilization of the cassava is also found in many areas in Mindanao. For utilization in terms of the relative proportion of utilization of this crop for feeds or processing or for food, 84% utilize actually cassava for processing. So many of these are actually used for either processing into alcohol or for starch and other intermediate products or value-added products utilizing cassava. Only 6% are being utilized for feeds, and 10% are utilized for food. So meaning there are really areas or communities or regions that utilize cassava as food, directly as food. And 6% for feeds, because cassava can actually be utilized, incorporated into our feeds, animal feeds, as a substitute, as a partial substitute to corn, starch source material for corn in our commercial feed preparation. And we did studies on that in the PhilRootcrops and found that before, in fact, we had our cassava feed mill, and then found, in fact, that it can be used as a kind of substitute to some extent on the starch requirement or carbohydrate requirement of feeds. Uses of cassava, you will have, of course, a staple. You have pellets for feed, and then cassava starch for a number of preparations, food preparations. You have your cassava flour, and then you can even make or ferment cassava starch into alcohol. And this is also gaining recognition. In fact, there are a number of industries, alcohol industries, utilizing cassava starch as their substrate for the production of alcohol. And then the byproduct of fermentation, you have also that seasoning there. And then you can also convert cassava for medicinal uses and for fuel, of course, through substitution or incorporation of biofuel in our commercial fuel. And then cassava can also be made into biodegradable plastic, depending on the technologies that we are using. So we are also doing that one. In fact, you can convert the starch of cassava into biodegradable plastic or to polylactic acid or polylactics to form them into biodegradable plastic. Okay, then if we are interested at the moment of how is the average farm gate price of cassava, for the information of everyone, how is this very attractive to the market? We have here from the year 2007 to 2020, and for example, cassava fresh tubers for food, there is not much change really in the farm gate price of cassava. And for cassava fresh tubers for industrial use, the same. I think the level of production 2017 2020 in terms of price peso per kilogram is actually kind of has stagnated. No? So you will notice how this affect really also the production in terms of how they are being how they can motivate or incentivize our farmers to produce more cassava and dedicate more farmland for cassava production. So this is really a determining factor, and I think if you base that in our data, it really needs a lot of thinking and improvement on how we can increase this one so that correspondingly we will have a higher demand and higher production in terms of cassava. Now, okay, now we move to production and utilization trends of our sweet potato. Sweet potato. So, in contrast to cassava, sweet potato is also very famous as a famine crop. No? So, if we are, for example, in disasters, if you notice cassava is really subject also to deterioration, especially if you don't process them within the right time. But in terms of shelf life of sweet potato, this can stand actually for quite a number of days. No, even if you don't process them, just store them, but you have your sweet potato, they're still edible. And here, from 2010 to 2019 also, you will notice that in terms of area of production, the areas planted to sweet potato has not really improved that much. In fact, in 2010, the area devoted or dedicated to sweet potato production is even higher compared to 2019, or even after from 2013 until 2019. So from this data, which we obtained from the Philippine Statistics Authority, you will note also that the production of sweet potato in terms of volume, tons per metric tons per for the year has not also increased considerably, and this also it's something that we have to think why is this so. And again, just like cassava, there is really much to be desired in terms of moving forward in the production of sweet potato. But then again, you have to think that this will still depend on the demand and the products that we are generating and how we are using them, and really the end by which our farmers can be motivated to produce, and then the area dedicated also increase correspondingly. Okay, in terms of region, you will notice that in terms of sweet potato production, it's really region 8 or Eastern Visayas that's topping the area, the large volume of production for sweet potato. And this is followed by Bicol and Central Luzon and Western Visayas and other areas, including the Caraga region. And all the others are divided into the other regions. So you will note here that for the ARMM region, there's not much sweet potato, but they're really top-notch here in the cassava production, because I think it's more than 40% that they produce the cassava compared to sweet potato here. And for utilization, it's either the food or the feed. 95% are utilized for food. I can understand why it's only 5% being utilized as feed, because we prioritize sweet potato for food production and for other food preparations. No? Medyo masayang din yung siguro yung thinking side by if we use them for feed, but in fact, it can also be used for feed. And we are also using, we did also studies on that, and in fact can also be used as substitute for, or as a replacement for starch source or carbohydrate source in our commercial feeds. So the average farm gate price of sweet potato, this time it's higher, of course, compared to cassava. It's 19.44 peso per kilogram, although in reality in the market, if you notice, the price of sweet potato could range here in our locality. I think the price of sweet potato can range from 20 to 30 pesos now. And if you go to supermarkets, for example, in high-end supermarkets for select varieties of sweet potato, it's really, really high. It's really higher. It would reach more than 30 pesos per kilogram, especially for those purple or colored or the orange flesh sweet potatoes, which really has some perceived or evidence-based medical or medicinal value or health values. No? Okay, production and utilization trends of our greater yam or ubi. Okay, so in the case of ubi or our yam, you will notice that in 2010, the area planted actually to yam is higher compared to the areas from 2011 to 19. And I cannot explain why is this so. I can only say that some of the areas perhaps planted to OB may be actually diverted to other means or utilized by other means. No? But you will notice that from 2011 to 2019, the area planted to yam remained also the same. Of course, from 2011 to 2019, the volume produced metric tons of OB production did not really increase that much, and it actually reduced from 2010. This is understandable because the area planted in 2010 was actually higher compared to the other years. No? And you will notice that at the present time, there is really a big demand for ube. In fact, when we harvest ube here in the central, in eastern Visayas, there are really commercial buyers that are really wanting to buy the ube produced, and we cannot just supply them. The supply is not just enough for a one-time use. And then the ano about ubi is it's only produced once a year because it's a photoperiodic crop. And being a photoperiodic crop, you can only harvest ubi once a year, every January. You plant it in May or June, and then you can harvest it in January. That's the only time. We are still to develop technologies for a whole year-round production of ubi, and still a lot of work is going on about this one, including the commercial production of quality planting materials. For production in terms of volume by region, you have here the Central Visayas is actually the highest in terms of area for ubi production, 38%. You will notice that Bohol, being part of Central Visayas, is actually, I think, constitutes more of this production. So they have their very popular ube, which is also being used for other purposes aside from the starch, or but they are also used in other delicacies or for ice cream and other food, pastries, cakes, and other food products. So 96%, of course, are being used for food, although in the data presented to us, 4% are being used as feed. Maybe this is the OB materials that are actually also not anymore good for processing. So they are being utilized also for as feed ingredients. You will notice here that the farm gate price of purple yam is indeed the highest among the major root crops. Have 35 pesos. It has increased from 2017 to 2020. It's a good pricing, and considering that there are really areas that are suited for ubi, and also has a very good soil for ubi production that could produce a very desirable variety. I think this is something that really could also motivate our farmers to grow. So our taro and gabi, on the other hand, still the same. There's not much improvement in terms of production from 2010 to 2019. We really have to still in our researchable area make some lands available for this one. But then again, there are also other priorities for land utilization, like our other crops that also need to be cultivated in areas, especially the high value crops or the cash crops that our farmers are actually also doing at the moment. And Eastern Visayas here, Eastern Visayas actually lead in the production of taro or gabi in the country, followed by Cagayan Valley, the Raga region, the Bicol region, and all other areas in their respective percentages of production. And utilization also, just like I know you have 5% are also utilized by feed as feed ingredients in some forms, and 95% also on food. The average price, farm gate price of gabi or taro is 18 pesos per kilogram. This may be higher in the other outlets, commercial outlets. If you can buy this in some supermarket, it could also be higher. And but this pricing here is a reflection of the general pricing in the farm gate. So this is farm grade, and that's what we buy from the farmers. So it could be higher when and they are also being sold in our wet markets or in the supermarkets. So the industry roadmap. So what's going on in terms of how our root crops are being developed or integrated into our industry. So the overall vision of the industry is to create wealth, improving the health and quality of life of millions through globally competitive root crop value chains. And the mission is to rationalize the root crop RDE mechanism through improved institutional and policy environment, hoping that we will have really something to improve the industry, to motivate our farmers to produce more if the policy and if the government programs are there, and seeing to it, we just see to it that all this will improve to the competitiveness of these crops. So the industry vision is to increase productivity of root crops, improve competitiveness of value-added products in the environment-friendly production processing systems, increase utilization and consumption of root crops to at least double the existing per capita consumption. So I guess now many people are also conscious, especially those in the senior stage or later stage, maybe are already conscious of eating root crops. And so some are actually substituting their rice diet with root crops. In a way, this is good because we will be doubling or tripling the production or utilization of root crops. At the same time, this has also a good effect in terms of the health benefits derived from these crops. Now, we have done so many studies on the nutritional and health benefits of root crops, and we can show you how this actually help us in terms of being a starchy-based food product, and also the added benefits that can be derived from the nutritional value or the chemical composition of these crops. Our strategies is to strengthen the RDE program, improve the value-added products for the local market and import substitution, and then export promotion for both the fresh and processed products. And of course, while we do with the compliance of regulatory services in terms of accreditation certification system, good agricultural practice, and also for our seed dispersal program for the community and for the industry. So breakthroughs in the root crop industry, we have here already the INSIC registered varieties. INSIC means the National Seed and Industry Council registered varieties. It has passed through a number of variety trials and National Committee on registering all these varieties to the different rates that are being prescribed. For cassava, we have 48 varieties that are already being registered. Sweet potato, 37, for OB 8, and for taro, 10. So you imagine how these are variable. So you'll notice that there are many varieties available. And these varieties, of course, you can choose one of them depending on the uses that you actually want, because some of these varieties are suited for a particular use or for a particular purpose. Like, for example, if you use them for alcohol production, you choose a variety with high starch content, and so that you generate more starch for your alcohol production, for your alcohol production. For sweet potato, there are also a number of varieties available depending on which particular application you would want these crops to be. Like if you want a sweet potato fries, like what is being used by some fast food chains with high starch or dry matter content, or the perfect combination of starch and dry matter that would approximately approach the French or the dried fries or the French fries, for example. And then for ubi, we also have 8. You can choose between the purple variety, the aromatic varieties, the white variety, the high-yielding variety, and so on and so forth, and as well as for taro. So these are all the INSIC registered varieties for these crops. For the details, we have here the details in terms of the composition in yield, dry matter and starch content, as well as for HCN, for cassava. This is actually the, if you recall, there are fears about the toxicity of cassava, and it's due to the hydrocyanic acid, the HCN, which are actually present in some cassava varieties. So all our INSIC cassava varieties have been screened, of course, for HCN, and their recommendations have also been based on the HCN or the hydrocyanic acid content of those varieties. So if it's low, it's really low, and these are considered as stable. You can eat them. Now, if its HCN is high, as there are varieties that are also high in HCN, then you can actually process them for starch, but only for a specific purpose. But for these thin varieties, for example, here, they are all low in HCN. You have also relatively good yields, like for the INSIC CV39 number 9, Raja 3, yielding 37 tons per hectare. It's quite high. It has a low hydrocyanic acid content, so it's really kind of very good. And this hydrocyanic acid content can even be removed during cooking or if you process it for drying, during drying. It has also very good starch value as well as the dry matter, which is also desirable in terms of the eating quality. Okay, so these are all the others. And you will see here that you have an HCN moderate. Moderate meaning we have actually a scale of an insect scale, no? The regulatory levels. If you delineating or ranking them as or assigning them as slow, moderate, or high, these other 10 varieties are actually moderate, but some of them can still be eaten. But if you prefer to be, if you're conscious, then you can eat you choose among the 10. And this one can be used for other processing. You will note here that there are also high yielding varieties here, like the N6 35 with 44.7 tons per hectare in yield, and also high in dry matter, which is also good for other application. So if you want them for processing, for starch, then you can use them also. You can propagate or cultivate this variety. Okay, for sweet potato, these are sweet potato varieties that have been also screened and resistant to scab and weevil. No? So scab and weevil, these are the two predominant pests affecting our sweet potato. So if you notice sweet potato, when you grow sweet potato, there are really certain seasons of the year where weevil, I don't know if you term, but in our local dialect here, we call him bukbok. And the weevil is actually also present now. And there are really seasons. But apart from that, these varieties here, 8 varieties of sweet potato, are actually resistant or tolerant to scab and the weevil. So you can actually grow them, and they are suitable for starch production. So here PSB stands for Philippine Seed Board, which means that these varieties have been screened and already approved by the Philippine Seed Board as varieties which are already commercialized for sweet potato. Okay, we have also developed the protocols in producing quality planting materials already through tissue culture, 2-node propagation for cassava through the nursery establishment. And we have that here. And we have a quality seed system for root crops also established here in the PhilRootcrops. And we are actually accredited already by the accrediting body as a producer of a quality planting material for quality, especially for cassava. Processing machines for cassava and sweet potato are also being developed in the Philippine Rootcrops Research and Training Center, like the cassava grades and flour processing system. And then we have the FOP products processing system, the portable extruder for chippy products, and the portable fine system for products. Did I miss any slide? I want to recall more. Excuse me. Okay. So these are the machines that are actually available. They are for sale if you order them. And some industries, there are actually already many who ordered these machines for processing. The high value food products also we developed from root crops, like the sweet potato, mixed sweet potato chips, your cassava chippy, the yuca pops, and then we have also the cassava choco chips, and all other products that are already commercialized. No? Maybe some of these products do not reach your region, but these are already being commercialized with the assistance of the Department of Science and Technology and also with the Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Agricultural Research, and the Department of Agriculture in Region 8. So the adoption of root crops technology through partnership with different farmers group, establishment of root crops processing hubs. We are doing this as our assistance to our communities. No? So these are already the communities that we assisted for processing. So we have processing for starch, processing for flour, processing Pasaba food processing plant. And last year we have also opened a sweet potato puree processing plant in our city of Baybay in cooperation with our LGU. Yeah, just to show that there are industry takers of our technologies in the market. So, this is our root crops center, and this is some of the staff. We were just celebrating, I think, our 44th anniversary of PhilRootcrops, getting strong, all these young people around, and I think many of these are actually geared towards, many of our work are geared towards development of the root crop industry. And I guess, so again, PhilRootcrops as a government research, development and training institution for root and tuber crops, and also for other root crops. And as what we have listened in the introductory part, we were established in 1977, and we are based in the Visayas State University Center for Research Excellence in Agriculture. So there are 5 sections here. Crop production, post-production, engineering, innovation, social science and extension, and our laboratory analysis. And for crop production, improving yields through the different varieties. I'll just mention this quickly. Then these are the products that we developed. We have the chips, we have the wine, we have the first for flour. We have the machines from our engineering innovation laboratories, and our social science and extension are, we have community engagements in Region 8 and also in some parts of the country. In fact, we are actively involved in Central Luzon area. We are doing some value chain analysis in the other parts of the country, and also assisting those who request for technical assistance. And we have our laboratory analysis for our evidence-based science investigation, and the services offered of PhilRootcrops. This is actually the view of our building. On top of the background is our Mount Pangasugan. And we have expert dispatch and technical assistance, development and fabrication of machines and tools, and customized and regular trainings for the training needs of our cooperatives, our partners, our state universities and colleges, and the other requests. We have multimedia and IEC materials that can be requested through the center. We have technologies primer that we can actually assist when the industry needs it or when we have partners. Distribution of quality planting materials, we did this through the years, and we assisted also communities, farmers who are requesting for our quality planting materials. And of course, we have a radio and Facebook programs also regularly being done by our researchers now. And I think that was the last slide. And this is our battle cry at the moment, Magmalambuon sa Lagutmon, which is translated into progress through root crops. And our as our battle cry for the root crops industry in the country. So I guess this is the last slide. And thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you so much po, Dr. Tulin. Now, sir, is it okay if we proceed to our open forum or the question and answer portion of our webinar po?
Yes, go ahead. It's
Yes.
okay.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Now let's go to our first question. So for our first question, what are the common challenges of smallholder farmers and processors po of our Philippine root crops?
What are the challenges of our smallholder farmers? Okay, let's put it this way. Our farmers, smallholders, actually, they raise root crops basically as an emergency, in perhaps if they have something, if they are planting it in the backyard, actually they can plant it, and the benefits that can be derived from it is actually they can harvest any time, for example, as long as it's mature enough. And then the challenge then can be if they really go into still smallholder, but if they produce something, the challenge is where will they market their product, and how sure are they that the products they produce or the roots that they produce can be sold, and who will buy these crops, no, and at what price. So it's good if you are a big root crop farmers because you can process it, no? But if you're a small holder, uh, except if you form a cooperative, for example, where you can join your product or your produce, if you're a small holder, you can buy it directly or you can sell it directly. And then if you sell it, then of course the price will be depends on what's the prevailing price in the market. But now, since root crops are then especially sweet potato, taro, and ube, there's not much challenge because the perishability or the shelf life is much longer. The challenge perhaps is for cassava because after 2 or 3 days, if you do not utilize them, if you do not process them, it's highly perishable. Now, so there. So you really have to process it immediately. And in terms of technical assistance, uh, PhilRootcrops being a national center, you just request them through the Department of Agriculture or through your agriculturist. We actually support them. We have our training programs, regular training programs, and so on and so forth. We can assist. So basically, pag backyard farming or smallholders, if we say smallholder, 1 hectare, that's probably still a smallholder. You can plant them. You just have to connect it to a proper market if you harvest that one. And we are also doing that for uh, as a form of technical assistance, as a form of assistance to our growers. No?
Okay, thank you so much for that answer po, Doc. No, and yes, it's a good thing also that of course Philroot Crops also extend assistance to our smallholder farmers.
Mm.
Okay, now let's go po to our second question. This is from Facebook user Paterno Gonzalez. So he is asking po, can we have a root crops research center in northern Mindanao where further tests can be done as to suitability of the recommended varieties among all types of root crops, or possibly an extension of PRC RTC?
Actually, we have actually testing centers for our adaptability trials throughout the country. It's actually distributed through different agroclimatic conditions, and we call them our cooperating stations. No, there are many. So it's all located in. If Lisa, can you enumerate them? I cannot remember in Mindanao. How many cooperating stations do we have in Mindanao?
Give me a minute, sir. I will enumerate them.
Yes, we have actually many cooperating stations we actually support them. We give them funding for testing of the varieties. And all these recommended or registered varieties have been actually, the data obtained from here have been the result of that data from the cooperating stations across the country. So for Northern Mindanao, we have, and we are actually, because this is for adaptation, different agroclimatic zones, then that's actually the purpose why we are doing that one. So that when we recommend them for approval, we also put in there the specific description or qualification which is best suited to what area. We will no, when Lisa gets the data, just enumerate the data, we will go back to that.
Okay po. Thank you so much po. But or is there any website po or Facebook page ba that they can check also what or where the different testing centers are?
Yes, we have a of course we have a web page, PhilRootcrops, and then you can also access the Visayas State University website. It's also linked in there.
I see. So yeah, so to our viewers, no, you can check those websites that Dr. Tulin have mentioned. Now let's go to our next question. This is from Facebook user JSai. So he is asking, good afternoon. I would like to ask, anong bansa po sa kasalukuyan ang top producer ng root crops in terms of cassava, sweet potato, and other root crops respectively sa buong mundo, and pang ilang spot po ang Pilipinas? Thank you po.
Okay, for one, there is Thailand, who is producing cassava at a very large rate. So in fact, Thailand is also exporting to the Philippines cassava starch. No? So Thailand is a major producer. Vietnam is also producing cassava, and also sweet potato, as well as Thailand is also sweet potato. And there are other areas. In South America, there are also cassava producing areas there. Is also contributing to the cassava industry across the world. So there are others. In terms of pang ilan tayo sa Philippines, we still have a lot to catch up because we still have a lot to catch up because actually we are doing that, but you know how these things work. If there are cheap importation of products, chances are the local price will also reduce, and there's no motivation from our farmers. It's really something like we have to play with it now.
Yes. Okay po. So, but yes, we still have a long way to go, no? But hopefully in the future, we will also belong na in the top producers, hopefully. So now, let's go po to our next question. So somebody is asking, based on your studies, what is the break-even area for the major root crops? For the 4 major root crops.
Break-even area, what do you mean? In terms of? Break-even area, is it the area planted?
Yes.
If it's the area planted for sweet potato, they actually root very well in the sandy loam soil, because if you have a loam sandy soil, the penetration of the root and the expansion of the root is also very nice. No? But nonetheless, all of these areas can actually be suited to planting cassava and sweet potato. For taro and yam, and for gabi, of course, this is under lowland condition. No? Lowland condition, because although we have the so-called upland gabi, but many of the gabis actually are in the lowland area, meaning it is submerged in water or paddy areas. No? For yam, yam is also can be planted in some locations, but there are really preferred areas for yam that will maintain its purple coloration if you're after of the purple yam. At the same time, its aroma. No? So that's something also to be worked at. So I must say that the purple yam in Bohol, the Bohol soil is really good for purple yam production, because aside from the yield, they also maintain the desirable aroma that our yam variety is actually producing. And that's the variety that's being used in the flavor for ice cream, for example, or for cakes. We have a purple yam in Leyte, but it's the aroma that is produced in Bohol is not exactly the same as the aroma produced in Leyte. So there is some kind of difference. No? Let's start that.
I see. Okay, thank you so much for that information po, sir. Okay, we have a lot of questions pa rin from our viewers.
Mayroon ditong ano muna ha, yung cooperating stations muna.
Ay, yes po.
We have two cooperating stations in Mindanao. We have the York, which is DARFO 10, and we have one in University of Southern Mindanao. So these are the two cooperating stations.
Okay, so I hope that our viewers took note of that, no? Those two centers of PhilRootcrop. And speaking of that po, Paterno, yes, a Facebook user, Paterno Gonzalez po, is asking, can the City of Agriculture Office of Cagayan de Oro, in collaboration with XU, be one of the research extensions here in Mindanao daw po of PhilRootcrops?
Ako magsasagot? Okay. Sige. Okay. Sige. Can the City Agriculture? Yes, we are open to any collaboration as long as it's for the growth of our industry. So we just have to PENAMOA specific activities that we would like to have, and we can provide you technical assistance. We have, as I said, we have a technical dispatch, expert dispatch that can actually, and we can extend your activities, and we can connect it to our existing programs here in the university.
I see. Thank you so much, sir. And hopefully, that can be done in the future because we
yes.
really
Just
to
I suggest that you communicate to us, and then just state your intention or your desire to collaborate, and we will plan for that activity.
Yes, we look forward to that collaboration in the future, sir. So now let's go to the next question. This is from California Fornication Facebook user. So asking po siya, status of cassava crop and farmers in northern Mindanao. What is the status daw po?
Cassava farmers in northern Mindanao.
Yes po. And the cassava cropland daw in northern Mindanao as well.
In terms of cassava, as I said, you have the northern Mindanao area, or the ARMM area is actually the highest producer of cassava now. And you can see that from the statistics survey. But in terms of specific in northern Mindanao, I'm sorry, I have no data, but we will provide you with the status of that one. Please leave your address, email, or contact number in the chat box, and our office can facilitate you, provide you with that information.
I see. Thank you so much for that po, Doc. Now let's go to the next question. This is from Xavier Kagiwat. Thanks for a great and comprehensive presentation, Doc Tulin. One quick question. How are we doing in terms of export?
We are not exporting yet. I think we are exporting in terms of cassava, and we are exporting for yam, for taro, for purple yam. There are industries that are exporting our purple yam powder products. That's the product that we know that is being exported, and of course some countries are importing our purple yam because of the demands of that variety. Now, for cassava, we are in fact importing from, if I'm not mistaken, importing from Thailand. Okay.
Okay, thank you po. So we're still still purple yam and processed pa kasi powdered pa siya na purple yam pala yung ina-exported na yun. So now let's go to the next question po. This is from Joseph G. Borja. Cassava can be can easily be produced abundantly in the Philippines, is there an initiative to substitute rice as staple food? So parang substitute uh, rice with cassava daw as staple food.
Perhaps the Department of Agriculture can help me. But anyway, we tried, we are advocating for cassava actually to be part of the diet, no? Because some people are just conscious about eating rice because of certain medical, ano, like diabetes, so on and so forth. So we are using cassava as a substitute for rice, but not really, but rice is still our, to tell you frankly, rice is still our staple food. And maybe it will be still, although we have advocacies related to that being in the free root crops, but you say rice as a staple food, you still have to eat rice. But little by little, we are giving the consciousness to people to really put root crops as a possible uh, substitute, not really substitute, as a possible alternative, no option, alternative for rice. In fact, if we can advocate for you eat root crops less one meal per day and then dedicate that less meal into root crops, that would be better. No, so you just eat, instead of eating 2 rice meals a day, just 3 rice meals a day. You eat 2 rice meal and you eat 1 root crop meal based per day. That would be good, in my personal opinion.
Oo nga po. Yes, but however, we Filipinos are really voracious rice eaters talaga. But yes, it's good also to diversify our diet, no? Insert some root crops, 'di ba? Instead of rice, rice lang tayo. So yes, that's
Yes.
oo. Thank you so much for that, Doc. Let's go to our next question. Somebody is asking po, is there a program where we can get quality cassava planting materials like in Thailand? So meron ba daw tayong mga programs na ganito?
Yes, yes. For cassava, we have a program in fact, PhilRootcrops, an accredited national agency to provide quality planting materials. We have been accredited by the Department of Agriculture for that. So in the past years, we have been as part of the DA program, DA bar funded project on the dispersal of quality planting materials for cassava. We are doing that. You can contact PhilRootcrops for that concern.
I see. Thank you. Thank you, sir. So, before we proceed to our last request, no, Facebook user Paterno Gonzalez, who I believe is from Cagayan de Oro City Agriculture Office. So he said po, thank you, sir. I worked formerly at Matling Industrial and Commercial Corporation in Malabang, Lanao del Sur, and we have a good collaborative research on cassava pest and disease control and varietal trials with Dr. Bacusmo, Mr. Mariscal, and Dr. Erlinda Vasquez. So nag-share lang po yung ating Facebook user.
Yes, good.
Yes.
We are still, Mr. Mariscal has already retired. The other two are still with us, Dr. Bacusmo and Dr. Vasquez.
I see. So,
Thank you, Mr. Paterno.
Yes, yes po. Oh, so we are really grateful, no, for these people who are doing a lot of research for cassava in the development din ng ating cassava and the whole Philippine root crop industry. So now, sir, this is okay. We have another question po. So, what is your advice to farmers who would like to venture in root crops?
If they have bigger area, then you can contact us if you need technical assistance. We can dispatch expert to help you with your planning and planting of your whatever root crop you want to cultivate. And if you have smaller area, like just for home use, then you can also do that. We can provide you planting material if you need, no? And we can provide you with the best planting material that will fit your purpose. If it's for eating, well and good.
I see. Thank you so much, sir. So, additional question daw po for free ba daw po yung materials na ibibigay niyo?
Uh, if it's cassava or sweet potato, maybe we can provide you free for a few, no? But ano lang, for home use or for not so big area, but for bigger area, we have actually for a fee planting materials that you have to pay. It's not expensive; it's cheap. And for taro and for gabi and yam, uh, we can disperse a few free items, but actually they are expensive planting materials, no? Because you plant them through the roots themselves.
Yes, we understand naman. Maybe also to those who would like to have these planting materials, also think of it as an investment na lang din, no? Because of course it's quality planting materials din naman. So for what is a little fee for that. So yun. Now, sir, we have Facebook user Xavier Kagiwat. He shared po, eating root crops as alternative is far-fetched po. Culture-based po kasi ito. We at PhilRice are doing some studies on finding alternative and add-on to rice po, like adlayer, etc. But in some part of Mindanao po, like in Barm, main staple po talaga nila ang cassava, especially in Muslim areas na wala naman masyadong rice-growing areas. Kudos to the PhilRootcrops and the entire team. And congrats din po to XU for the successful webinar. So, nag-share lang po siya ng kanyang thoughts regarding sa question earlier. Yun.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So now, sir, this is our next question po. Of course, since you've already told or shared your message to those who would to the farmers who would like to venture to root crops. Now, how about to the students, sir? Especially since we have a lot of viewers from the academe. So, what is your message to our students, and also to those who are from the academe? So, yes, with regards,
Okay.
of course, the Philippine root crop industry.
Good question. Good. Okay. To our students, especially the students who are taking degrees in the College of Agriculture of Xavier University now, I think I guess you have plenty of students as well studying the agriculture. I have been advocating our young students to study agriculture because even if you don't get rich in the agriculture sector, we need food, and it's not necessarily the end that you don't get rich. I must correct that statement. But eventually, if you use the proper technology for agriculture and really dedicate yourself, you will eventually get rich through agriculture. And being in agriculture, not only because I'm being in agriculture, but if you study agriculture, you have really good you will be inspired because you know how this is in terms of providing us food, and specifically for root crops, being considered a lowly crop before, but now I think the importance of root crops, cassava, sweet potato, taro, and yam cannot be underestimated anymore because this has shown to be very, like as they say, sweet potato, for example, it's a famine crop. True enough, it can save hunger, it can save people in terms of disaster, and we also produce many products. So I advise our students to, if you are really interested, there are lots of researchable areas for root crops, be it in cultural management, production, or technologies of processing, health-derived benefits, so on and so forth. There are really many things that can be done for root crops. I am personally studying now minor root crops for health benefits. It gets separated even if I'm doing other jobs, but the benefits derived from also from minor root crops can also be studied further for your interest. No? So if you're really be on research, be on business, you can really think of something bigger for the root crop industry. So, our dear students who are listening, maybe it's your chance now to imagine and to do something better, no? For And in fact, we are now doing a project on futures thinking for root crops. And I think we will be expecting from our brainstorming, we're expecting a lot of crazy products from root crops derived from our futuristic view of this kind of crops. No? So, ano lang. So I guess good luck to all those who know, and we are here to support you.